Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bow Hunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting. Hey everybody, it's been a hot minute. Once again, I feel like this has been a typical theme, but want to jump in and actually do a little episode for you guys. I've changed some stuff around. There's been a lot of changes going on in my life, to be honest, hence why there has been a long gap between podcasts. I also want to tell you about some of the new gear that I've got that I've really been loving. So let's get straight into it. I guess realistically, I started a new business probably 6 months ago in email marketing, so helping businesses to earn more money through their email lists or to help them to automate their systems. And that has just been going pretty bonkers, to be honest. It's really interesting to see what companies are coming to me for the work. I've literally, I worked with a removalist company. I worked with a plumbing company, with a fire installation company, but a lot of stuff with a CBD oil product, and just with some different e-commerce brands like protein powders and bits and pieces. So it's been really sick to kind of get in and do that work and do something completely different to what I've been doing in regards to the health and fitness space with my other business. So it's been really interesting. I've really, really enjoyed the new task and new challenge, I guess, of learning the traps of going down that route, and getting a virtual assistant on to help me out with everything and making sure that it's all kind of flowing very smoothly. So, that's been a whole heap of fun. The other news is that we are pregnant again. So we've got baby number 2 on the way. We're at 20 weeks today. Actually going to get scan 2 done, which I'm super excited for, which means we actually can find out the sex of the baby today. So the plan is that we will find out. We're going to get the old balloon done. I'm going to shoot it with my bow and arrow, which I'm pumped for, to do a little reveal. I don't know if we're actually going to let everyone else know or not yet. So you might be lingering for the next 20 odd weeks, 21, 22 odd weeks, depending on if you give a F or not. But it's pretty exciting times. So, I mean, that was the other thing that kind of coincided with not doing the podcast so much, because my wife really suffered a lot from sickness during that first trimester. Like, she literally becomes like a zombie, which is so bizarre. It really baffles me, like something that the female body is designed to do, yet it just absolutely takes it out of so many women. And there's only a few women that I've ever heard of that really haven't had much problems or much sickness or any sort of side effects at all, whereas it seems to absolutely wipe out most women, which is pretty crazy. So that first kind of 12 weeks, actually like the first 14 weeks was just really hard on her, which meant that not only my work requirement went up because she helps me out with the health and fitness business that we run, but also just the extra requirement around the house, like helping out a lot more there. Not that I don't already, but it was all lumped on me. So doing all of that side of stuff, plus trying to make sure that our daughter was getting some good interaction time and not just chilling with mum on the couch all day while she was feeling absolutely horrible and couldn't feel like she could move. So there was a lot of stuff that kind of played into it to stop me from having the time, I guess, or making the time to be able to do the podcast. So that's kind of where I've been. Lastly, the last podcast I actually recorded was with Rob Morris, and I'm going to get Rob back on because unfortunately I had my first ever corrupt file. So it's been pretty much, I think, 5 or 6 years of podcasting. And I've never actually had this happen, but my device that I use for recording shat itself and didn't record the files properly. So that was kind of just the extra little kick in the guts that pushed me over the edge to say, you know what, I just need to put things on pause for a little bit. I'll come back to this when I'm ready. So hence why you guys haven't heard from me for a while. So there has been a lot going on. But I am very excited to keep talking about bow hunting. I love it. It's really, I think I said this previously, but it's something that I know is going to be a part of my life going forward. So I feel like this will consistently be a podcast for as long as I'm still into bow hunting. I want to keep my finger on the pulse, and it gives me an opportunity to be able to talk to a lot of people and educate a lot of people. I still get messages like almost on the daily through Instagram, which is just freaking incredible, about people who are just getting into bow hunting or looking for a new bow, and talking about how much that very first episode that I did with Ian Summers, how much that actually helped. So it is really exciting. It kind of really, it really motivates me to keep this going. So thank you guys for being loyal listeners and for sticking it out, for listening to all the episodes, for all the comments and feedback that you constantly give. I really do appreciate that. In exciting news on the hunting front, I'm trying to get involved with a group up here. It's a group that I've constantly talked about on the podcast. It's called the Ridge Group. But the Ridge Group, I didn't actually understand it fully. The Ridge Group is like the essentially the research group, whereas the actual group for hunting is the Wild Country, and that's through Clark McGee, a name that you guys have probably heard about throughout the hunting realm. He's very well known. He's got a great YouTube channel that's up and running at the moment if you want to get across and check out any of that stuff. And so part of that was going up and meeting Clark a few weeks ago. I took my daughter up there. We went out and we hung out for the day, and it was just such an incredible vibe, like going to the property there, hanging out with them, and they were just so welcoming. They were very happy to have Mads there, my daughter, and I mean, she's not even 2 yet, and she had the best day. Like they've got two deer there. They've got a little fallow, and I believe a little rooster that were there, and they're pretty much they're housebound because their mums were killed, and so what they did was they took these fawns on and they've raised them up, and so Mads is absolutely stoked to see the deer. There was chickens, there was lizards, like there was everything. She was just so over the moon with that interaction of living that little farm lifestyle for a day. And I went and talked with Clark, and he is just an unbelievably genuine dude. Like the vision he has for hunting and the things he's trying to do for hunting, not only within Queensland but across Australia, is absolutely incredible. And I'm excited to have him on for the podcast at one point, because I know he's got a lot to share, and I'm really excited to kind of help him share his voice, I think, because some of the stuff that he has to offer is just absolutely incredible. Including, like, I mean, they talk about having anywhere up to 1,500 deer running around their small little part of the world at any point in time because of the management system that they've got going on. So I'd be really interested to kind of get that out and be talking to him more about that, and hopefully get that out to you guys, because it'd be really interesting. I know there's a few guys, especially down south, I've been talking to, who have their own blocks and want to manage to get more deer involved in around their blocks without it kind of affecting neighboring blocks and whatever else. So I'll just be really intrigued to kind of hear and learn more about that, but also just the opportunities that he set up for people. Going into Ridge Group, I'll be probably one of the only bow hunters in Australia, within the group, which would be very interesting, because I don't really understand the whole system yet, and I've got more to learn about that before I can kind of really delve into how that's going to work. But I think it is pretty exciting. It opens up more opportunities for me, because it is a slight bit closer, and it's interesting because obviously I've got a block, but it's about 3.5 hours away. It's a family block, and at the same time, I need to respect that it's not my block. At the end of the day, they're still trying to run a business off of this block. They're still trying to do everything they need to, and so I can't just willy-nilly go along anytime that I want. So it does come into play about talking to the farmers and making sure that it works out with them, making sure that I'm not just there every single weekend and busting in on them. So hence why I'm also excited to kind of have this other new block where it's a paid block, and you're going, pretty much you get kind of set amount of times that you can go within the year or within your membership, and you just kind of keep utilizing that. And I think realistically, the value for money on the block is incredible. Compared to, I mean, any place I don't. I think everyone can charge whatever they please, right? But you get to choose what you want to go to. Some of the blocks that I've seen, they charge what I would say a heck of a lot. Whereas other blocks kind of charge $100 a day. And so it's about just choosing and figuring out what works well for you and your budget, and what you're trying to achieve as still a beginner to bow hunting. I mean, three years deep, and I still classify myself as a beginner. I definitely want to give myself a place that has a lot of opportunities. So places like Red Hill that I've gone to previously were really great for that, where you've got goats and you've got plenty amounts of them. I don't know how that block's going right now. I can't even get to it because there's a freaking border block up between Queensland and New South Wales, and I'm not even going to get into that stuff. But geez, it's a shit fight here. I can tell you that. Like it's we're the clowns of the world right now. So anyway, back to hunting. I am excited to be getting out this out to this block, and I think at the end of October will be the first weekend that I get to go out and kind of check it out and start my membership up out there. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of see what that brings moving forward. Especially that I am going to be the only bow hunter out there. Potentially, I've got another mate who's thinking of signing up. So potentially two of us, and he's a traditional bow hunter, so he's got it even harder. What I would think is harder. It was funny because talking to Clark, he said, you know what, eventually you'll go to traditional bow hunting. He's like, you'll eventually come to learn that it's so much faster and that you can draw and take more shots and you've got more flexibility as a traditional bow hunter compared to on the old wheels. So yeah, I am like, I always had the intention of going back there eventually. I've got a lot of things that I want to do with my compound bow before I get there. So we'll see how that plays out. In regards to some new gear that I've been playing with and trialing out, some of you guys who've been following along the socials, you would have seen a while ago, I really have to put a big thank you out to Reed Hall. He sent me his Evolution Plus, the Carter back tension, and I got to play around with it. I also, at the same time, ended up buying a back tension release. Like my plan was to always go in and buy one or the other. One of the listeners reached out and said, dude, I've got this Stan Perfex. If you would like to buy it, here's the price. He gave me an awesome price, so thank you very much to Sticky Designs for that. I bought it off him and I was like, you know what, if I get them both, I'll test them both out, and whichever one I don't like, if I didn't like the Stan Perfex, I'd sell it. If I really liked the Carter Evolution, I'd just buy that variation instead from whatever I get to sell my Stan Perfex for. And so I got the Evolution on the Friday, and I believe I got the Perfex on the following Wednesday or thereabouts. So I had a fair bit of time to kind of play around with the Carter Evolution Plus to start with. And it was like, it as a release, it is just like such a well-built release aid. Like, it is just incredible how nice it feels. Like, you pick it up and you're like, wow, that is sturdy. Like the I don't know, just how it's made with all the steel and everything that it's made from is just, it just feels solid. Like, you pick it up and it gives you a certain amount of confidence picking it up straight away. Funnily enough, I picked it up and tried to use it straight away, and I was so scared because I'd heard so many stories of people smacking themselves in the face. So I really wasn't sure what to expect. I thought I was going to punch myself in the face when drawing it back. So I was excited that didn't happen. But when I was drawing it back, I was like moving my head right out of the way and like acting like an idiot because I was really not sure what was going to happen. But turns out that the videos I watched were very informative, and they helped me enough to get through without punching myself in the face. So that was good. So yeah, in regards to the Evolution Plus, I believe it's very similar to what they use for the silverback, what John Dudley uses as silverback, something like that. It's just obviously he's made his few own changes to it to be the silverback. And so I was really excited to kind of trial it out. And essentially what it is like, it's a big circle around your pointer finger, and then you've got a few grips off the side for your other fingers to sit on. With the release aid being a back tension release, what happens is it works off of the pull through of the shot. So essentially you come to full draw, you pull through the shot, and eventually when the trigger says it's time, it will shoot off. It releases, and so it's like a surprise release. And what this is really good for is getting around target panic and getting around. It's just really good for being really, really perfect with your shot process and making sure that your shots are spot on. And a lot of people, pretty much, if you guys have been listening to the podcast, if you've heard a lot of the episodes, so many people rave about back tension releases and how much it's changed their shooting game. So it was always kind of my goal to get one eventually, and it just so happened a few months ago I was like, you know what, now's time. I just wanted to get into it, and it was obviously the perfect timing for it all to happen. And so essentially what happens is, rather than pulling a trigger or pushing on a trigger at the very end of your shot to release the shot, instead you pull the trigger to draw back. So you hold the trigger down, you draw back, and then you release your trigger when you're confident that you can start to take your shot. Now, when you release your trigger, it doesn't necessarily take the shot straight away, because you have to go through your process of still pulling through the shot. And then eventually, as long as the trigger is off, the safety essentially is off, the shot will fire off. And so to start with, it was just funky trying to make sure that I had the weights set up properly, making sure weights, by what I mean there is that the back tension of it, you set the tension. So you set it roughly to what your draw weight is. And so as you pull through, once it's got a certain amount of tension on it, it will release for you. And so, yeah, I went through the process of setting up the Evolution Plus, because Reed had set it to 63 pounds, and my bow's a 70-pound drawback, and I had a longer reach than him too, I believe. So I had to kind of knock it up a fair bit more and make sure it was a bit heavier. And so once I got it firing right, it was just so consistently shooting very well. Like, it was interesting to kind of see how good it really is. That surprise shot just makes such a big difference. And every time, like, consistently, my shots were pretty much perfect. What I did find to start with, though, is that I was really preempting the shot, which is funny because it's meant to get rid of target panic, which essentially is preempting a shot, right? Where you flinch before you actually take the shot. And I would find, like, my body would literally, like, do a convulsion. Just all of a sudden I was going to shoot and it'd be like, whoa, like, it was so bizarre. Like, if it had shot, I feared for where that arrow would go, because I don't know, it was just so bizarre that your body, like, wants to have a reaction. The other thing that I found, that occasionally to start with, I was really pushing the bow rather than pulling through with my back arm. And that was also making a fair bit of difference in the shot accuracy. But once I started playing with it quite a lot and getting a feel for it, you start to really feel that difference in the pull through and how good that shot actually could be when you're consistently pulling it through. A few things I really noticed is that my weight, depending on my, when I'd pull back, my left shoulder was definitely, which is my forward arm. So I pull back with my right arm. My left shoulder tended to be high, which means I was kind of using my traps, or that muscle that runs along the top of your shoulder, rather than using the lats, which is the big one that sits on the side of the back, to pull things back and down, or pull that shoulder back and down. So that was kind of consistently happening. So once I transitioned that, shots were definitely becoming a bit more... a lot more consistent. The other thing I noticed is that I was putting a lot of weight on my back foot and not much weight on the front foot, which is somewhat good, but not to the extent I was doing it. Just need to have a bit more of a balance there. The other thing that I got pointed out to me, and this is before I actually got the back tension releases, was that my stance was a closed stance. So essentially my front foot was either in line or blocking my back foot, which didn't open up that stance very much to allow for a sturdier shot, essentially. And so what I've started doing is transitioning. So if you can imagine my front foot being my left foot, my back foot being my right foot, essentially my front foot, my left foot is about halfway, middle of the distance, or middle of the foot, compared to my back foot. So back foot is in front foot is behind, just slightly, and it just opens up position. And then you can swing or rotate your hips to be where you're aiming, rather than it just being completely closed off and not having any extra there. And it's interesting because I was talking to Adam, my buddy who I go hunting with a fair bit, and he's a traditional hunter. He was talking about how, I think it was on the Push podcast, they were talking about opening your stance even more, like a really, really wide kind of stance. So and also getting a little bit lower, like a bit of a bent knee, and how much more power that gives you as a driving point from the hips, which makes a lot of sense because it's kind of like a power stance that you do in a lot of sport. So yeah, I was kind of intrigued to hear that, and it's been working really well for him and his accuracy. So that's been pretty cool to kind of hear and play and do all those things. So yeah, the Evolution was really awesome. I really enjoyed it. And then I got the Stand Perfex, and when it rocked up, to be honest, when I first grabbed it, it's a bit lighter than the Evolution Plus. It's got like a plastic hang off to the side, so the actual release aid itself is metal, but it's got plastic for your extra fingers off to the side. And it just felt kind of flimsy. Like in comparison to the Evolution Plus, it just didn't feel the goods as much. The trigger is so smooth on it, like ridiculously smooth. Like in regards to the Evolution felt like it's not the case at all, but it felt like you were grinding through it to pull it back. Compared to the Perfex, which is literally just like the smoothest trigger. It was incredible to kind of feel the difference on that. But when I drew back with the Perfex, it just felt nice. Like it just felt really good. One of the main reasons is that when I was pulling back with Evolution, it was really making me favor pulling with my pointer finger. Whereas with the Perfex, it was just a little bit easier to kind of get a grasp across. It's pretty much your three fingers, your pointer finger, your middle finger, and your ring finger that you're pulling back with, and it made it easier to be able to grasp and pull back with those three fingers. And what I found is that when I was using the Evolution quite a lot, I was getting almost like a consistent, like I don't want to say like a pain, but essentially it was like it was causing a discomfort in my pointer finger compared to when I used the Perfex. It wasn't doing that at all anymore. And so it was interestingly enough, although the Evolution felt like a sturdier release aid, like in general, I just really liked how it was. When I used the Perfex, even though it felt almost fake, using it was actually incredible. Like the difference it made was just huge. And what I mean by that is just how smooth it was, and the process of using it is just so nice. And I had Reed's Evolution Plus only for a few weeks, but I really took a favor to using the Perfex more just because I actually genuinely liked it more, not because it was the one that I had bought. I was very happy to sell it on if it was not working for me. But I genuinely really enjoyed the Perfex a lot better. So I kept it. Yeah, I sent Reed's back and I thanked him so much because that is just an absolutely incredible thing to do. So Reed, buddy, thank you so much, dude. I really do appreciate that. But I'm also really, really loving my Perfex. So it's the long neck, the back tension release aid. And yeah, I think just in general, it's just made things smooth. I find it interesting because I still don't know if I've got the confidence to go hunting with it. I haven't been shooting at least over the last 2 weeks. I really need to get back into it, and I'm going to because I've started to free up a bit of extra time right now, which is just absolutely wonderful. So I would like to start shooting again, especially because I am going for a hunt at the end of the year. But when I shoot with it, it takes sometimes longer than I would like for the shot to go off. Not to say that I'd be taking shots that wouldn't necessarily need that, but it's almost like having the ability to shoot when you want to, like definitely shoot when you want to with a trigger release for hunting situation makes a lot of sense to me. Whereas if I was to kind of have this and I was to draw back, and I'm going to tell you guys a hunting story in just a second, something that happened to me just on the last hunt I went on. If this sort of situation was to happen, and a deer was to start to run off, for instance, when you were to take a shot, or an animal's to start to move, and because your back tension pull through wasn't just quite as what it should have been, your shot fired off lately, and that caused an injury within an animal, that would be absolutely heartbreaking. And that's I guess a bit of a fear of mine. So I'm really open to anyone who wants to reach out and tell me their experience with that. Yeah, please do. I'd love to kind of hear about that and what you did. And I mean, really, it could just be the difference of me actually going hunting with it and seeing how it doesn't happen. But for right now, that's kind of the thing that's almost giving me some holdback right now. Yeah, what I have been doing is actually shooting with my back tension release quite a lot. And then just before I went out hunting, just previously, or just a few weeks back, what I ended up doing was getting the trigger release back out and using it. The wrist strap trigger release, and it was pretty interesting to kind of see that. I was like, oh, there's no way I'm not going to be as accurate with it, but sure enough, my back tension release is making me a lot more accurate at the longer distances, so I'm talking like 40 meters and thereabouts. Excuse me. at the 40 meter mark, it was definitely making a bit of a difference. I was a lot more accurate with the back tension compared to what I was with the trigger release. But when I say a lot more, like I'm talking about the difference of being like, if you think about the Reinhardt target, you've got the black circle in the middle with the yellow circles on the outside. I was consistently hitting the black circle from the 40. When I was using my trigger, I was hitting on the yellow or just outside of the yellow. So it wasn't like it was a ridiculous amount. Like, it was funny. I put up a story once, and it was actually Lonnie Brockman. He reached out and said, I don't know, I said something about like, oh, I wish I could get these tighter. And it's like, you know what? It's still a kill shot at the end of the day. Like those shots, all of those shots that you've just taken, they would have all still been a kill shot if you're on the vitals. Like if you're aiming at the heart, it would have been either top of the heart, or off to the lungs. So you would have been safe. And that was like a bit of an aha moment for me, or a realization of like, oh, hold up, like that is good. Like, yes, obviously you want to be as accurate as possible and you want to be punching those circles where you can be. But it was a good realization. So now what I'll often do is I'll aim for my spot, and if I miss it, I'll then gauge, hey, if this was, depending on what critter it was, would have this still been a kill shot, yes or no? Which is also good, I think, for boosting your confidence as a shooter, which is really important. You need to make sure that you've got confidence and that you're backing yourself when you're going out hunting. So, yeah, I do find that to be quite a good little tip. And also, I believe I've talked with Lonnie, and he's talked about how good his journey with the back tension release has been as well. So we might have to have another yarn about that as well. But yeah, so recently I got to go on a little hunt at my bread block. I was lucky enough to actually take a mate with me, and so we went out and we were getting around. It was actually a very interesting situation. We were both meant to go on different paid hunts that weekend, and both fell through. So he was meant to go on a buff hunt for his 40th birthday, and unfortunately, because of the closures and whatever else that's going on, he did not get to go. Just gonna have a quick sip of my coffee. So instead, I teed up that we got to go to my red block, which I was very surprised by. To be honest, it was an interesting situation because I've been hunting there for the last 3.5 years, and only ever taken one person along with me, which was James Doomstis, and he came out and he just videoed. The deal was that he could come along, but he was not allowed to hunt at all. And so with this situation, I kind of thought the same thing might happen. But they were actually very happy for me to bring along a friend because I vouched for him. And I told them that we'd hunted on the other blocks before, and it was someone that I highly trusted. And I think they really trust me for that as well. They understand that. I think really I've kind of proven to myself as a bow hunter for them. To start with, definitely there was a bit of like does this guy actually know what he's doing? To now, like I'm seeing animals every time I go out. Like I'm able to give them a lot of insights whenever I'm there. But also I've been really quite successful. I think one of the biggest turning days for me was when I got out there and I knocked over 3 pigs in one day. And I was just absolutely stoked with that, because if they're out there with a rifle, they usually only get one shot, and that pig's down and the rest of them are all scram away. So that kind of to them was like a bit of an aha moment. So that's kind of been good. And like I said, I was actually, when I asked, I was not sure if I was even going to be able to gain access. And I really think there needs to be a lot of, sorry, I probably shouldn't do that. You probably hear every scratch I was just doing on the table. I really think that there needs to be that really high level of respect held for the farmers, whether they're family or not. Like whatever block you have access to, I think that first and foremost, you're going into someone's house and you really need to respect that. So I really try to hold that standard when I go across. And so even asking for someone to come over with me was a big deal. And I was really stoked when they actually did let me have him come along. So that was amazing. Anyway, so we went on a hunt, and pretty much we went out for 3 days and didn't see a thing. Of course, it's the way, right? Take a friend along and nothing happens until the very last morning. We're going out, and we had not been up the very back of this block at all. And I'd gone to all the places where I usually see deer, and I bumped one red hind off of, she was on the side of the creek bed, and I didn't even see her. We were literally probably 10 meters away before she saw me, and she was sitting up on top just looking through a bush at me. And as I stepped down into the creek, she noticed me, obviously, and she just up and ran, and she was scared. Like, she hadn't seen me until that moment. So yeah, that was the first time that we had seen. That was on day 2. And then it was day 3. We were out in the morning. It was the last chance we had to go hunting. And we went up to the very back block, and all of a sudden, we were driving up to the very back. We bumped these 2 deer. I think one was a stag, like a little spiky, and we're pretty sure the other one was a hind. And they bumped straight out of our block, straight onto the neighbour's block. And so we went up to the very back corner. We're like, look, they're on the neighbour's block now. There's no way we're going to get to go at them anyway. So we'll just kind of drive at the back and see what the winds were doing. We got to the back corner, and the winds were just absolutely horrible. So we decided that we're going to drive back closer to where we saw those 2, and we're just going to watch them just to see what they were doing. Like, if we hadn't seen any deer all weekend, what was the point in stomping through the grounds without actually potentially seeing any more? Let's just go back and watch them and see what they do. Just really try to, I guess, pick up on their vibe and see what's happening. So we drove all the way back down the fence line and ended up parking the car up and stalking back. And we went back without anything. We didn't have our bags, we didn't have our bows, we had nothing. We had our binos, and that was it. So we went down, and it took us a fair while, but we eventually located them. We're just watching them for ages. And then I actually got really thirsty. I'm like, I'm going to go back to the car. I'm going to get some water, and I'll come back down. So I did that. And when I got back, I stupidly still didn't take my bow. I don't know. We were just, because I was in the mindset of, we're just going to watch these deer on the next door neighbor's block. So there's no point in having the bow there. And so I went back, and as I'm walking back, Adam, my mate, was like, dude, they're there. And I didn't really understand what he was saying, but I knew he was saying there's deer. There's deer right there. They're close by. So I kind of turned around, went straight back, and got my bow, got my bag, and started walking back and trying to figure out where they were. And I eventually get up to him and kind of sneak right up to him. And they're literally like within 100 meters unfortunately on the neighbor's block, just sitting right there, like a mob of, I think it was six hinds just there, just feeding along the side there. And the winds were kind of slowly creeping around, or more so that they were starting to walk into where the winds were going. So we're just sitting there watching them for ages. And eventually the winds, they walked into the winds, and they spooked, and they ran down towards the car a fair bit more. So at this time we still didn't have Adam's bow or his bag. So we went back to the car. And when we got back to the car, we had a quick bit of food, and we're just sitting there, and literally they're just up on the hill, 400 meters away from us, just watching us. Like they obviously knew we were there. They weren't too fussed by us. They were just watching us, and we just sat back and watched them for ages just to kind of see what they would do. And really, they were just feeding along. They really didn't take much care to us. The thing that did spook them, I think they could see us. Or actually, that's a bit of an assumption. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they had no idea we were there. But we were openly talking just like this. And so they potentially could have heard us. They potentially could not have. But they were on top of the hill, so they had vantage point as to where we were. And then next thing we knew it, there was the sound of a vehicle. And that was actually what got them pretty alert and aware. So we were just standing off to the side of this hill, watching them, talking like this. Didn't really make much of a difference. As soon as we heard the vehicle go, they, kind of eyes up, and they were watching the whole time. And eventually they kind of moseyed off onto the next paddock, or the other side of the hill where we could stop seeing them. So we were like, all right, well, that's a big mob. So there's 13 of them that we ended up seeing. Once they kind of got over the hill, and eventually collected some more. So went from 6 to 13 all of a sudden, which is actually the biggest mob I've seen there. I think so. I think one winter I saw a bachelor mob of, that might have been like 9. So to see 13 all in one was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool. And so we're like, okay, well, they're well into the neighbour's block. What we'll do is we'll go the other way around, pretty much. So we went and stuck back to our game plan of hitting that back block. So we did the whole mosey around, walked around the whole thing, and sure enough, didn't come across anything. We sat off some water for a fair while and did not have any luck there. So we eventually started making our way back to the car. We're like, okay, we'll hunt over, time to go home. Let's go back to the house, we'll pack up all of our gear, and we'll make a move. And so as we hop back into the car, we're kind of looking around, hoping that there'd be deer around. There was not. So we started driving back, and we had to go through a set of gates Went through the gates, and then just after the gates, there was a little creek you have to drive through. So we drove through the creek, and as we were driving out of the creek, sure enough, there's a mob of 5 hinds just standing up on the next block. So I quickly stopped and reversed back down into the creek, and it seemed that they didn't actually notice it. So we reversed back just far enough so it actually worked out that I could see them and Adam could not, just because of the way of the land. So stayed just pretty much there for the next little chunk in time, just watching them, and they were not doing anything. They were so stoked to just be along the fence line. They would kind of chop and change between a little bit of shade off to the side and a bit of shade that was on the fence line, and they were not doing a thing. We could not hop out of the car because the wind was literally directly blowing straight to them. So if I was to hop out of the car, I think they would have definitely just run off straight away, which also meant that any play that we had on them was not going to be really that great. We can move the car back down to the creek maybe and then walk along the creek bed, but pretty much their view was an open view of the front, like where we would have walked out into. It just wasn't really going to work out. And so eventually I said, look, we're going to have to drive the car past them for this wind to be even anything worthwhile of our favour. And so that was our plan. And pretty much I said, look, once we drive past them, if they actually spook, I think I have a fair idea as to where they're going. They're going straight down to this different part of the creek that we call Thunder Creek. I reckon they're going to sit in Thunder Creek, which was a part we'd gone through kind of 2 days before, and I'd shown Adam everything. And so that was pretty much the game plan. So we started the car up, we drove straight past them, and as we drove past them, they spooked. They ran into the middle of this paddock, and they kind of sat there watching as we drove off up over the hill. So we got over the hill, we parked the car, and pretty much it was game time. So we jumped all our gear on, got up into over the fence and into that paddock they were in, and started to make a big trek around. And it's this is the paddock I talk about a lot, the scrub paddock that has just like bulk ridges. Depending on where you are within this block, the wind really swirls quite a lot. So we had to kind of be cautious of that, and I knew exactly where we had to go, but we had to do a very long route of it. And so we pretty much trekked straight up the ridge first so we could make our way around back down into where this Thunder Creek is. And so we did that, and we were making our way down. We were super patient, very quiet, getting down into Thunder Creek. And I kind of thought, we were glassing the whole time, but there was a lot of land that we couldn't see while we were walking into it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hop into Thunder Creek and glass out to the part where I think they'd be coming from. And at this point, we had no idea whether they were in Thunder Creek or whether they were still out in that main paddock block. So I'd taken the assumption that they were still out in the paddock block and going to be walking towards us. So we were kind of cruising through, and at one point I thought I heard something. Now there's cattle. This is literally on the fence line pretty much of the neighbour's yard where Thunder Creek meets it. And so there's cattle just on the other side of that. And I thought maybe it was just cattle. I'm not sure. So I started making my way across anyway, and it was like the driest, cornflakiest shit you've ever walked through, and every step was so crunchy and so noisy. And I took a step, and that's when I heard the noise, like something kind of ran off. It almost sounded like, or made a fair bit of noise. And I was like, oh, was that something running off, or was that actually just me? I'm not sure. Or was it some cattle? I really kind of was unsure at that point. And like, obviously, in that stalking stage where anything could happen, you're quite alert, right? Like, and the adrenaline's kind of pumping. So things happen. You hear a lot of stuff, and you're just unsure as to what's going on. Anyway, so I started to make my way over to where there was actually water within the creek. So, sorry, I need to explain. I'd gone into the creek, and then I'd come back out of the creek as I was watching out into the paddock. So this puts me pretty much on the bank of the creek. And I decided to go out of the creek again and walk across because there's a few bends. And I just walked straight across the top to go to where the water actually was. And this is when that cracking stuff happened. And I got across the water thinking that they might be in the actual water, and there was nothing in there. I'm like, okay, they're not there. I don't know what's going on. And so I was in there for a little bit, and as I walked back out, I literally just got an email. I'm just going to read this email really quickly. This could be a very exciting email. This is about the bow giveaway. I'm going to read it in my head, though. Good news. Bo has left Hoyt. There you go. So the bow is on the way. I really thought we'd have the bow already ready to give away, but unfortunately we've not given it away yet, which means it is on its way. So good news is it's on its way. That's all I can give you guys. So the bow giveaway is happening. What it does mean is it gives you a little bit of an extension time. So if you have not signed up to the Bow Hunters Challenge and you would like to sign up to the Bow Hunters Challenge, you can go to bowhunterschallenge.com, and that would put you in the draw to win a fully ready fully ready to hunt Hoyt Ventum 33. So absolute weapon of a bow. So that is very interesting news. That's a good little email to receive from Andrew Sherman. Thank you, Andrew. But yeah, sorry, I divulged back to the story. So I'm walking into this water park where all the water is. And I get over there and there's nothing in there. And by this stage, I was kind of like, you start to almost give up a little bit. I was like, okay, well, Hunt's probably over then. And I looked back and I thought Adam had seen me, but he hadn't. So he started delving, he'd gone along the top of the creek. So he was probably like 50 meters away from me maybe. And he started diving straight back into the creek from where we were. And he was walking down, which meant that he would have eventually kind of gone through the snake bend of the creek, which would have put him on the other side of where I was of the water, which would run, if there was anything out there, through the water. And so I actually saw him. I was like, oh, I start following him. So I started going back across, but then I needed to take a piss. So I took a piss at the top of this water puddle, pretty much, like the top of the riverbed. And then he got a fair way away from me. So I then started to walk down towards where he was. And by the time I got down to where he was gone. Like I couldn't find him at all. I couldn't see him at all. So I'm like, I'm just going to be really quiet. I'll just stay here. Eventually he'll come back around. And so I'm waiting there for kind of a good 5 minutes, just looking around, just taking in the nature. Last little part of the hunt where you're almost, I guess, thinking back on everything and wondering how it could have gone differently. But also just enjoying that time in nature because it's so pretty. And all of a sudden, 5 deer run out in front of me. I'm like, what the frick? So I didn't actually have time to really range them. I watched them run straight in front of me. I think 3 of them ran out, then 2 of them stopped because I moved to see them. And I was pretty much behind a tree trunk, like I was looking through the V of a trunk. So I would have been connected somewhat to the tree to this deer. And it's looking at me like, oh, there's something there, but I can't really make it out. And it doing the old head tilts and whatever else. I actually already had an arrow knocked on my bow. And so I was like, you know what, fuck it. I just need to really... Right now, you've got 2 choices. You could either try to range this deer and it could probably run off because it's definitely somewhat aware, or you could draw back and take a shot. So I think I'd bent down at some point to kind of get out of its range. It was still looking, and so I drew back and stood up, and I'm like, that's at 40. Like, there's not much doubt in my mind. It's at 40 meters. If not, I'm going to miss. But I'm pretty certain that's about 40 meters. So I took my shot, and it literally was shooting perfect line. Like, you know when you take the shot and it just feels so damn good. And this is it. I'm watching it just sail through the air, like the perfect spin, going straight for its vitals. And she did not move. She didn't move at all. She's just standing there looking straight at me. Took the shot, boom. And literally just as it's got to her, I'm like, she's going down. And it went straight underneath her. And went under her chest and hit the dirt behind her. And when it hit the dirt behind her, that was when she, boom, took off. So I ranged it later, and it was 42 to the grass was the best reading I could get. I feel like where she actually was probably would have been more like 45-ish, I guess, for it to lose that much to lose that much, like for it to be on 40 and to not hit her based on where I was aiming, which was heart shot, essentially is what I was going for. Pretty much left me thinking, okay, she had to be at maybe 45 for it to have that drop. Especially because the shot felt so good. If I'd pulled the shot or something, I would have been like, okay, cases, you messed up. But it all felt like it was perfect until she ran away. And now I realized I'd completely missed until I didn't hear the thud. So, yeah, I went over and got my arrow, and it was just buried completely into the dirt by this stage. And yeah, dug it out, and that was the end of the hunt. So as unfortunate as it played out, it was also one of those weekends where you have pure, I guess, grit or toughness of slogging out a weekend and pretty much not seeing anything until the very last day where we got to see everything, and it was just all of a sudden the excitement was all there. So even though we walked away empty-handed from that hunt, it was still one of those experiences that even still to my day, still to this day, it gives me kind of the chills and excitement of talking about it and thinking about it. So I think just any chance you get to go out hunting is kind of like that. So yeah, pretty pumped. So guys, I think that's kind of it. That's about all I really wanted to share with you guys right now. I do plan to kind of keep having these coming out, but I won't promise you the house. We'll just see what happens and plays out over the next few weeks. I need to actually plug in my other system and see if it is still working or if it's going to make everything faulty. So that's another task I have to get going. But like I said, business is kind of taking priority. Family's kind of taking priority at the moment. So I'm sure you'll understand. Thank you for that. Secondly, I guess if anyone has a business and they want some help with their email marketing, I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you, at least even just to explore it and see if it is something that's worthwhile. But so far, we've seen some freaking incredible returns from the businesses that we're working with. So, not to make this all about business, but it is also obviously something that keeps me and my family alive. So I'm sure you understand that too. But yeah, guys, I really hope you're out and you're hunting. I hope you're getting as many experiences out in the bush as you can. For everyone down south who's been in complete lockdown, I really feel for you guys. My heart really goes out to you. I'm always here if you guys need to chat at all. Very happy to talk on socials. Instagram is becoming a bowhunter podcast. So yeah, very happy to talk to anyone. I've actually got a fair few people that I talk to from Melbourne way, regularly, a lot. So yeah, guys, stay strong. That's all I can say. Keep your wits about you. Keep to your fights if you're fighting. I think realistically, it is a blip in time. It sucks that this blip in time has taken up, especially for the folk in Melbourne, has taken up so much of your life over the last 18 months or more. But realistically, keep strong, because hopefully it is just for another little chunk of time. We'll get out of this and we'll see it through. But yeah, definitely here. If anyone needs any help, anyone needs to talk it out at all, always happy to be an ear and to be a friend on the other side. So yeah, guys, like I said, hope you're getting out hunting. Would love to know your hunting stories. You know what? Something that I often say to people is keep me in the loop with your hunting when they reach out to me on Instagram. And whether it's just because they're not successful yet, I don't know. But there's a lot of people that don't keep me in the loop. But I genuinely mean that. Like, if you guys are having success out in the bush, I really would love to hear about it. So if you've been one of those people and you kind of thought that was just something that I said, it wasn't in jest or anything. Like, I really wanted it to be. It is a genuine thing. When I say the things I say, it's because I genuinely mean it. So yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this little episode, and I'm excited to bring you some more when they come. That wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, team. If you did have any topics, questions, or you wanted to suggest a guest for Becoming a Bow Hunter, you can send me an email at matty@becomingabowhunter.com. If you are enjoying the show or you've enjoyed in particular episodes, please do me a solid and share it around with your friends. If you are not already, please hit the subscribe button, as the more subscribers we get, the higher the podcast gets ranked, and that definitely helps out for showing it to other individuals. If you are not already following me on Instagram, it's at becomingabowhunter.podcast, and on YouTube, it's Becoming a Bowhunter. Get out, team, fling some arrows, get that practice in, and walk those yards in the paddocks until you find those critters. That is it for now, but not the last time that you'll hear from Becoming a Bowhunter.